Right, video 3, Road to Democracy. Our first video, we looked at the background and we looked at the introduction. Our second video, I looked at 1990 with you. So let's recap. We've got an introduction with the definition, what content to cover, the line of argument, and the context of 1990 and 1994. Then the background, the 1980s, you're looking at mass mobilization, sanctions, internal and external pressure. Paragraph 3, opening of Parliament, 2nd of February, and you can cover there what the terms were that the F.W. de Klerk laid out at that State of the Nation address. Fourth paragraph, you could look at Sebokeng, the rent protests, and the Grootjeskuur Minute, the talks about talks. Paragraph 5, you could talk about Pretoria Minute and the Sebokeng incident with the IFP and the ANC clashing. And then you can talk in general about the third force. Now, when we discuss the third force, you can discuss the fact that there are issues surrounding why are the IFP and ANC clashing so much, and there are allegations made that there is state funding of Inkatha to be launching these attacks on the ANC. Now that third force or those allegations of ongoing violence, that can actually go anywhere, but that could be a good place to put it in. And that's as far as we'd gotten. We'd finished looking at 1990. So next, we're going to go back to our table and look where we were. So there we have it. We have covered Paragraph 1, introduction. Paragraph 2, background. Then we've got opening of Parliament. Then we've got Sebokeng rent protest, Grootjeskuur Minute. Then July, Sebokeng IFP attack on the ANC, Operation Vula exposed. August, the Pretoria Minute. State of emergency, ANC agrees to end the armed struggle. That's as far as we were. And now we start with 1991. So 1991, there's ongoing violence between the ANC and the IFP. It's a good time to reference your allegations of a third force, especially because in July of 1991, it is discovered by means of what they called Inkatha. It's just a name, such as Watergate and other scandals that have happened in the world. They've added a gate to it in reference to a Watergate scandal in America many years ago. So it's called Inkatha because it is the exposing of secret funding of the IFP by security forces, by the government. And so that you can find on page 283 in your Viva textbook. So for 1991, you've got these allegations of ongoing violence. You've got evidence of ongoing violence. July, you've got Inkatha proving that something is going on. And then, very briefly, just you can make reference in September to the code of conduct that was signed by various members. So it's called the National Peace Accord. It's on page 284 of Viva, and it's just where various organizations and political parties come together and say, we agree to that we will behave in this way, we will do these things. It's very brief mention to it. You can then mention that a patriotic front gets formed in October 1991. Again, you don't need detail on that. And then you get to one that you have to go into a lot of detail about, and that is the 20th of December 1991, CODESA. So you can call it CODESA, but you must at least one time indicate that it stands for the Convention for a Democratic South Africa. 19 groups, 400 delegates, they meet at the World Trade Center, and their job is to iron out these negotiations and take the country forward. It's a massive undertaking. On the negative side, the PAC and the Conservative Party, so that's far left, far right, there's a group that withdraw. They don't want to be involved in these talks, and that means the Patriotic Front ends, because if they're not talking anymore, then they're not part of any sort of front of patriotism. Okay? And so CODESA, there you need quite a few details. You also can speak of the 5 working groups that got formed as a result of CODESA. 400 delegates can't sit there day in, day out. So they form 5 working groups, and you can mention what those working groups are going to work on. And then you look at 17th of March 1992. And there we have a testing of the National Party's credibility. So what had happened was that F.W. de Klerk went to visit in Ventersdorp, and he got stoned by some white people throwing stones at him when he was supposed to be on a visit to the area. And that made people realize that F.W. de Klerk had lost support. Then there were a couple of by-elections lost. So a by-election is when you have an election outside of election time because somebody's died or has resigned. And by-elections are normally an indication of how a political party is doing. So the National Party had those constituents in the palm of their hand. They had voted for them in the past, and when a by-election happened, these white voters then voted for the Conservative Party. So it creates this vacuum where people are saying, does the National Party have white people's permission to be speaking on the behalf of white people? And it means that the National Party doesn't have credibility. So the National Party decides to have a whites-only referendum. Remember, at that stage, the constitution hasn't changed, the country hasn't officially changed, so it's a whites-only referendum, and a referendum is a vote, but where you don't vote for a party, you vote on a yes or no issue. And the issue was, do people support the reforms that are being undertaken? And 69% voted yes. And you have to wonder, if the results had been very low, what would have happened? You couldn't undo everything that had already taken place and rewound and made it as it was in the 80s. So it was a bit of a gamble, but obviously they knew that predominantly white people were supportive of the reform process. That's why they had the vote. And so if W. de Klerk can go back to the negotiations, knowing that he has the support of the majority of the white population. That gives him a bit of strength again. Okay, so that leads then to these 5 working groups now have to report back at CODESA 2. And one of the issues that they discussed was that the SABC should report neutrally on events that happen. So it's May 1992, CODESA 2, and this is supposed to take the country forward now, because it's been 1990, it's been 91, now we're into 1992, and still there's the National Party in power. And so this is supposed to speed up the process. However, this gets derailed or ruined or becomes a problem because of these incidences. So on the 17th of June 1992, we see that there's an incident at Boibatong. This is a very traumatic and terrible event that happened. You'll find it on VIA, page 272. 49 people get killed. The Goldstone Commission is set up as a commission to investigate what is going on, because this again appeared to be conflict between the IFP and the ANC. And again, there's allegations of a third force. Is it just IFP and ANC? That's 2 forces, or is there a third force that is instigating violence? So now you see that if 49 people, men, women, children, in their homes are slaughtered, then how can we talk about a new South Africa or of negotiations when nothing fundamentally has changed for Africans living in townships? And so this derails CODESA 2. And the ANC does not want to be involved in negotiations if their people are being killed in their homes. And so the ANC embarks on a rolling mass action. They call for a national strike in August. So they're going to use their economic power to show that they are the cogs of the economy of South Africa, that it is Africans who are necessary in the country. It is Africans who have the final say as to what needs to happen at these negotiations. And so it's really taking power to the people. And then another negative thing, on the 7th of September 1992 is the Bishu massacre. So yeah, we need to talk about the homelands. So in the homelands, you had leaders who had been given their positions by the National Party government. And so now the issue is that they are a leader in their country, they're a president in their own country, although the rest of the world didn't recognize the homeland as being a country. And it comes with perks. Now, is each homeland going to give up that independence and become part of this new South Africa, which means that those leaders are going to lose their power? So there was a lot of distrust of homeland leaders. They were seen as sellouts. They were seen as puppets of the National Party government. And so in the Ciskei, the former homeland Ciskei, the ANC was protesting and marching, and the leader instructed the Ciskei troops to attack. And so 28 ANC marchers die. So that is black on black violence, but there is the suspicion that the leader of the Ciskei acted on the instructions of the government of South Africa. And so this again is a setback, because who wants to talk about change when the people are experiencing death and mayhem and violence and conflict? Right, so that takes us to 7th of September 1992.